Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So glad to be here with all of you. Should be a fun conversation tonight. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell, and here we go.
Spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, everybody. So glad to be here with all of you. Should be a fun conversation tonight. Might be a little shorter than usual, but that's okay, right? That's totally fine. We can do things that way. Yeah, it's just going to be a kind of a late Friday night chat. So, as usual, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. So this morning, I had a great conversation with Russell Texas Bentley. And of course, because of the censorship and stuff, that conversation won't be showing up on here, but it is available on Rockfin. So if you want to watch me chat with Russell Texas Bentley, by all means, let me just drop the link in here for you. Hold on. Let me just drop the link. Yeah, hold on 1 second here. It was a great conversation. Russell Texas Bentley is an American from Texas who went and fought in the Donetsk People's Republic. He's been there for quite some time. And and it was great to be able to talk to him. It was really, really great. So there you go. It was good times. I'm trying to get the link here to work for the Rockfin. Hold on. Okay. Trying to get the link here for you. Anyway, I'll figure it out here. But I think this will work. Wait, I'll get it off my Twitter, right? Because it's giving me Rockfin is a little bit different than other outlets. So let me get you the link for the Russell Texas Bentley interview. I don't want to get it to you wrong. It was a great conversation. I got him talking. We talked about different things. It was pretty good. I asked him about his background. I asked him about the situation on the ground in the Donetsk People's Republic. Sorry, let me just pull up the link for you. Hold on. It's been one of those weeks, folks. That's okay. A lot of things are going on in the world right now. It's a wild time to be alive. It really is a wild time to be alive. And, a lot of people are struggling, but they have a community. So they have a community, and we at the Center for Political Innovation, we are here to make life better for folks. So here you go. Here's the link to the Russell Texas Bentley interview. I just dropped it in the chat so you can watch it. There you are. It's on Rockfin, and it's exclusively on Rockfin because of all the tech censorship that we've been dealing with. So there's that. Now, the way I tend to do these streams is I give some opening remarks, and then those opening remarks are followed by a roll call. And then that roll call is followed by me answering super chat questions for the rest of the night. So if there's something you want me to answer in the second half of the show, by all means, send me a super chat, and I will write it down, and we'll go from there. But thought I might just open tonight with, a story that I heard years ago that is kind of amusing. Don't know if it's true or not, but it goes like this. The story is that in a really small town, there was a mailman. And the mailman, he had a specific route where every day he would deliver the mail. And he got to know the people on the route. There was one very old woman who was always home. And she was always home, and she'd often be sitting on her front porch when he would come to deliver the mail. He would bring her the mail. And almost every day she would say, "Do you have a letter for me from my nephew? I would love to get a letter from my nephew. Do you have anything from my nephew?" And every day he would look into his bag, and sometimes there'd be junk mail for her. Sometimes there'd be tax forms or business, but there was never a letter from her nephew. And she would always be disappointed every day when she didn't get a letter from her nephew. So it was just a thing, and it became kind of almost like clockwork. He would come to her house. He would walk up to the mailbox. She'd be sitting there, and she'd say, "Do you have a letter from my nephew?" He would say, "No, nothing from your nephew." And he would leave it. And then as he came around, she would start to say, "Hey, do you have a letter from my nephew?" And then she would talk about how she was kind of struggling to get by. She was having trouble paying her bills. And this mailman, he kind of liked this woman. She was a very kind woman. He could tell she was very, very lonely. And she continued every day to ask him, "Are you going to bring me a letter from my nephew?" And he would always say, "No, nothing from your nephew." And then she would go on to complain about her financial difficulties. Now she was having trouble making ends meet. So one time around Christmas, the mailman thought, I could do a really good deed. I am going to write a letter to this woman, and I'm going to pretend to be her nephew. And then in the envelope that I send her pretending to be her nephew, I'm going to give her a small gift, a couple $100, something that'll help her pay her bills. So the mailman, he's talking to the other mailman. And he's saying, "Hey, I'm thinking about writing a letter to this lady who's always wanting to hear from her nephew. And I'm going to give her a small financial gift for Christmas. And, it'll just be a nice thing. Nice thing I can do." And the other mailman said, "This is completely illegal. This is completely illegal. You cannot impersonate someone else and deliver a letter. That's postal fraud. You could lose your job for this. This is completely illegal. This is called mail fraud. You cannot do that." The mailman was like, "Oh." He looked over the postal regulations and he realized that, for him to pretend to be the woman's nephew, completely illegal. For him to, give her cash in an envelope, pretending to be someone else, as the mailman, that's completely illegal. But, he thought, what are the chances of me getting caught doing this? They're very slim. Very, very slim. And so, around Christmas time, came around to the old woman's house. She said to him, "Do you have anything from my nephew?" And he said, "Why, yes, I do. It's your lucky day." And he gave her the envelope. Oh my goodness. And her face lit up. She was so happy to get this letter from her nephew. So he gave it to her. Of course, he has a grin because he knows the letter's not actually from her nephew, but he knows he's doing a good deed, right? He's giving her some extra money. He's pretending to be her nephew. It's a way of just doing a nice holiday good deed. So then, of course, the next day he comes around. He brings her the mail, and she's got a letter for him. And she said, "Here's a letter I'm sending back to my nephew." Oh, my nephew was so kind. He finally wrote me a letter, and he sent me this gift, this financial gift, and it's helping me out. I'm going to be able to pay my bills. It's so great. My nephew is so amazing. Here's this letter to my nephew. So the mailman takes the letter, puts it in his bag, and he says, "Wow, I'm so glad your nephew is such a kind, upstanding citizen." And he's got kind of a grin on his face. He feels like he's Santa Claus here. He did a nice thing anonymously, right? He's feeling up in the holiday spirit. But then he realizes he's got this letter for the nephew. And if the nephew gets the letter, he's going to open it and realize that someone's impersonating him. And so he thinks, oh, geez, I really can't deliver this letter to the nephew. In fact, this letter's got to get lost in the mail, if you know what I'm saying. And then he remembers that if he were to do that, not only did he write a letter to this woman under a false name, but now he would be opening somebody else's mail. It's completely illegal. And, basically, getting rid of a letter that was paid for with a stamp, that's completely illegal. And he's like, wow, I'm in deep. But, if this letter reaches the nephew, she'll know someone was impersonating her. I'll get caught. So he slips the letter into his back pocket. And that day after work, he figures, all right, I'm just going to dispose of this letter that she sent to her nephew, so she never hears from it again. But then he thinks, I kind of want to read it. It would be kind of a crime to just throw the letter in the garbage. So he's got the letter, that she's sending back to her nephew, opens it up, and he reads it. And it's a very sweet note. And she tells him all about her family and all about what's going on. And she talks about the good old days when they used to go on vacation together. She includes an old photograph of her and her nephew together. It's just the sweetest letter. And he's reading, and it's just a really, really nice letter. Finally, he gets to the end of the letter, the very end of the letter. At the end of the letter, she says, P.S. She says, next time you want to send me a gift, would you mind sending a check or a money order? I think my mailman is a crook. I don't know. I like that story. I think it's sweet. I think it's a sweet story. I don't know if it's true or not. It's kind of one of those folksy stories that you hear. I think it's sweet. I think it's sweet, right? She ends her letter by saying, I think my mailman is a crook. And she's right, because the mailman was a crook, but he was doing a nice deed for the woman. I don't know. I find that's one of those touching kind of holiday stories, right? You ever hear those kind of touching stories? Jenny Lynn thinks it's adorable. So I made Jenny Lynn smile. So it was worth it. It was worth it. There you go. But, I like telling stories like that, Peter Azadi thinks it's a cool story. So there you go. There you go. I was thinking the other day about a couple things. I was thinking about really old songs, right? I was thinking about really old songs, and I was thinking about the holidays. And then I immediately thought of, a couple of years ago, I read you all on here the lyrics to a really old ballad from England. From like the 1700s, but it's way older than that. Apparently it was originally written in Gaelic and German, and it's this really, really old ballad called The Death of Young Andrew. And I was thinking about the death of young Andrew the other day. And it's this really gory, violent, old ballad. Right. It's one of the Childs ballads, right? There was some guy named Childs, and he was going around England in the 1700s collecting like folk songs that people sang to each other. And he collected this ballad, The Death of Young Andrew, which I don't know if we'll get into it here tonight or not, but it's really it's a particularly violent piece of writing. It's particularly bloody, and it's about it's about people betraying each other and vengeance, and it kind of shows that back in the Middle Ages, people were pretty ruthless. The Death of Young Andrew. But I was thinking about the death of young Andrew, and the way the death of young Andrew ends. Well, actually, I don't want to give it away. So hold that thought. I'm not going to get into the death of young Andrew right now. But I was also thinking about another song. There's a very famous Christmas carol. That's very popular. It's not one of the more famous ones, right? It's not "Have a Holly Jolly Christmas" or "Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer." It's an older one. It's called "Good King Wenceslas." This song, people sing it around Christmas time. It's an old Christmas song, right? Have people ever heard "Good King Wenceslas"? Right? If you haven't, you've probably heard the tune. Like, you've probably been in a store around holiday time and you've probably heard this song. But I will find a non-copyrighted version of it and I will just put it on for you right now. Because it's a very famous Christmas carol, right? It's very old, but there's more to it than you would realize. I'm gonna find like a version that won't get my stream shut down, right? That's my goal here. So yeah, let's find a version that looks very amateurish, like a high school choir or something that's not going to get me a copyright strike here. All right, I found a high school choir from Alhambra, California performing it. That will not get me a copyright strike. So got that, YouTube. Not using the professional version that would make my audience much happier. I'm using a high school version I just randomly found. It's not a high school choir. These are adults. Don't worry, right? We're not violating the privacy of any children here. They're not singing. This is a bell choir. Oh, goodness gracious. There's no lyrics. Okay, now gotta find another one. Can't do the Alhambra, California one. That doesn't work. Goodness gracious. Oh my goodness. I'm just trying to find you a choir. I'll type "Good King Wenceslas choir." I'll do that. I'll do a choir version where it won't be copyrighted that way, right? I'll try to find you some amateurish choir performing it, right? It's a Christmas carol. It's one of the more obscure Christmas carols, but it's not as famous as the ones you always hear, but it's a good one, right? It's a good one. Hold on. All right. This is a choir from Kansas City, Missouri, performing "Good King Wenceslas." So again, if that Kansas City choir wants to sue me, or if I get a copyright infringement for this, hold on. If I get a copyright infringement for this, I'll be utterly shocked. But you never know. These things are very, very weird. So we're gonna play "Good King Wenceslas" right here, and so you know what I'm talking about. Because if you don't know what I'm talking about, this won't make any sense, what I'm about to tell you, because it's actually kind of it's actually quite relevant. You would think this is just a Christmas song. This is just one of those like holiday tunes that people always hear. But it's actually got a lot to do with what we talk about on our streams here. So I just thought I'd share that with all of you. So here we go. I'm queuing it up, right? Oh, goodness gracious. All right, I'm queuing it up. Queuing up "Good King Wenceslas," a version that will not cause my stream to be shut down by copyright law. All right. Here we go. From Kansas City, Missouri. Now, that is a very famous, popular Christmas song that people like. I saw, I was looking in the chat here. Like Simon, he said, I didn't even know that this song was the song you meant. Sang it in high school choir. Yeah, you just hear it and you don't think about it, right? You don't think that there's any political meaning in that song, but it's actually very, very relevant to what we talk about on here. It's actually highly relevant. Every time you hear that song, you should think of socialism or Bonapartism, because that's what the song is about. It's about Bonapartism. This song is about a Bonapartist. Wenceslas was not a king. He was a duke, right? And he was given the title of king after he died because he was martyred for Christendom, for Christianity. He lived in the 900s in Bohemia. That's like now known as Czechoslovakia or the Czech Republic or Slovakia. He lived there, and there was a big divide among the aristocracy at the time. Half of them were Christian, and half of them were pagan. And the pagan aristocrats and dukes were fighting against the Christian dukes, and they were battling each other. And it was a struggle within the ruling class. The aristocracy of Middle Ages Bohemia were battling each other, trying to get the peasants to join their side against the other aristocrats. The Christian aristocrats battled the pagan aristocrats. And they were fighting against each other. And Wenceslas, the Duke of Bohemia, he was a Christian. And his rivals were the pagans. And so Wenceslas figured out that in order to get all the poor people on his side, he should start doing really nice things for poor people in order to get them to support Christianity and to support him against the pagans. So in order to rally the peasantry to be on his side against the pagans, he started doing really kind things, like feeding poor people, like going up to random poor people and giving them gifts. And he became known as the friend of the poor. He was just this charitable person who went around doing kind things for the peasantry because of the fact that he wanted them on his side, and he wanted them against the rival faction of the ruling class. So basically, Wenceslas, he was kind of a mini Julius Caesar, or maybe even a mini Roosevelt, if you want to put it that way. He was a mini Julius Caesar or a mini Roosevelt. He was a member of the ruling class who was threatened by other members of the ruling class. And so he entered an alliance with the peasantry, with another class, in order to defeat and stabilize and win out among his own class, right? So what Roosevelt did. Roosevelt was a member of the capitalist class, but he was being threatened with a fascist coup by the other members of his class, so he entered an alliance with the working class. Julius Caesar, he was a member of the military aristocracy of Rome, but he entered an alliance with the proletariat so he could defeat other members of the aristocracy of Rome. This is called Bonapartism, and it's essential to understanding how revolutions happen, because every revolution in history has started out as a fight within the ruling class, and it brings the working class into motion. And soon the working class becomes aware of its own strength and eventually becomes, is able to overthrow all of the capitalists. But part of the process of the working class awakening is fighting among the ruling class amid chaos. That's why Lenin, he writes about how when there's the crisis, when a revolutionary situation happens, is when even members of the ruling class feel that the old way of ruling is no longer possible, right? And that when a capitalist crisis enters, you have divisions in the ruling class, and this gives rise to Bonapartist struggles within the ruling class. You get your Roosevelts, you get your Hitlers, you get your Kerenskys, you get your Kornilovs, and that maneuvering in these alliances leads to the proletariat taking power. That when Hugo Chavez first got elected, he was a Bonapartist. He was a military member of the military class. He was like a brass military guy in Venezuela, but he entered an alliance with the working class. And that alliance, and I'll get to that, Lionel, and that alliance he entered eventually got Venezuela on the road to socialism. So good King Wenceslas, or Duke of Wenceslas, he was given the title of king after he died. He entered an alliance with the peasantry in order to win the peasantry to be his allies against the pagans, right? And actually, the story goes, right, if you read that the time I'm trying to read, he became known for his good deeds. This is what was written about him. It says, "But his deeds I think you know better than I could tell you. For as I read in his passion, no one doubts that rising every night from his noble bed, with bare feet and only one chamberlain, he went around to God's churches and gave alms generously to widows and orphans and to those in prison and those afflicted by every difficulty, so much so that he was considered not a prince, but a father to all the wretched." That's heavy, isn't it? Right? So this guy is rising from his bed every night with bare feet and only one servant, and he's going around to churches to give help and charity and kindness to widows and orphans and people in prison and people with difficulty, so much so that he's considered not even to be the king or the prince or whatever, but he's the father of all the wretched, right? This is a very kind man. This is how Americans viewed Roosevelt, right? Like he was the father of the country, right? That, this is how Americans viewed Lincoln, right? He was old Abe Lincoln who came up from the wilderness, right? And he was like the father of the country who's caring for the downtrodden and all of this. And of course, we know, why is he doing this? Is he doing it just out of the goodness of his heart? Well, we'd like to believe that, but in reality, he's doing it because there's a struggle within the ruling class. And the other nobles want to kill him. The pagan nobles want to overthrow him because they don't like him because he's a Christian. So he's trying to recruit all the peasants to be Christians on his side. And so to do it, he's going around to the churches and giving people nice things and being, he's like a Santa Claus kind of figure. He's the father of the poor and the wretched. So then what happened to Wenceslas? Right? The pagan nobles couldn't stand this guy because he was building a class collaborationist alliance. He was building up a Bonapartist alliance against them. And Christianity was becoming very popular in Bohemia, and those pagans were losing out. So what did the pagans do? They conspired against him, and they formed a conspiracy against him, and they assassinated him. And in September of 935, a group of nobles allied with Wenceslas' younger brother plotted to kill him. After Boleslav invited Wenceslas to his celebration of the saints of the Cosmos and Darmia, 3 of Boleslav's companions fell on the Duke and stabbed him to death. And as the Duke fell ill, Boleslav ran through him with a lance. Jesus Christ. They didn't just kill him. They really killed him. Holy shit. Right? 3 guys jumped on him and stabbed him, and then somebody else took a lance that's like a long spear and ran it through him. Like, they killed him dead, as they say. Holy shit, they killed King Wenceslas, right? According to Cosmas of Prague, in the early 12th century, one of Boleslav's sons was born on the day of Wenceslas's death, and because of this ominous circumstance of his birth, the infant was named Strachvus, which means dreadful feast. That sucks. So the day your grandfather gets assassinated is the day you're born. And so your name for your whole life is Dreadful Feast. That sucks. That poor guy. Anyway, Wenceslas was killed, and he was considered to be a martyr for Christianity because he was, trying to convert all the peasants to become Christians. And because of that, the pagan nobles all conspired against him and stabbed him to death. And so he's Saint Wenceslas, right? He was given sainthood after his death. And to be a saint, you have to do a miracle, right? So the lyrics to Good King Wenceslas that you just heard, the lyrics describe like he went to go help some poor person and he didn't leave any tracks in the snow. So that was his miracle. It's kind of a lame miracle, right? He didn't turn water into wine. He didn't bring anybody back from the dead, but he went to go help somebody and walked through the snow, and then there were no tracks. So that somehow was a miracle. So that was how he got to be a saint. That was Good King Wenceslas. But anyhow, the song Good King Wenceslas, that Christmas carol you just heard, is very political because it's about a Bonapartist. And actually, you may not have been able to hear the lyrics, right? But the last line, the last stanza of the last verse of the song goes like this: "Therefore, Christian men, be sure, wealth or rank possessing, ye who will now bless the poor, shall yourselves find blessing." Right? So it's basically saying that that Christians have an obligation to help the downtrodden, to help the hungry, to help those in need. So it's a Christian, I would argue it's a Christian socialistic Christmas carol. So the next time you hear the song Good King Wenceslas, right? Think about socialism. Think about Bonapartism and struggles within the ruling class, because that's basically what the song is about, right? It's basically it's a song about a struggle within the ruling class. It's a song about an aristocrat who entered a strategic alliance with the peasantry. That's what it's about. So I just wanted to share that all with you, because we need to find ways to relate to people, right? Because if we can tell this story, right? Imagine that you're a teacher, right? And you told this story to your students, right? Then for the rest of their life, every time they hear bum 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 bum, they're going to think about socialism. And that's beautiful, right? And it's very relatable, right? People may not be ready to like Stalin. They might not be ready to like Mao, but they can like Saint Wenceslas, right? Because everyone likes him. They sing his song at Christmas time. He looks like Santa Claus. He's this mythological, he's a figure that we can all like. But if you actually look into the story, if you're a Marxist, and if you're someone who understands dialectical and historical materialism and class struggle, it's a very important story, right? It's a great story. So these are the kind of stories that we should really go looking for, right? When we can have stories like this, right? By teaching people the story of Saint Wenceslas and who he was, and the struggle within the ruling class. All of this is teaching people the science of revolution. This is teaching people Marxism in a way that they can understand it. And it shows that this stuff, did the people who wrote that carol, do you think that they were Marxists? Of course not. Do you think that the person who wrote this, no, these are things that everyone can relate to, because these are the objective laws of history. Classes enter struggles. Divisions in the ruling class lead to alliances with other classes, right? That the will of oppressed classes is often asserted because of divisions within the ruling class. These are of the objective laws of history. This goes back to the assassination of Julius Caesar. This goes back to the execution of Socrates. These things happen, right? And this is something that we can understand, and we can teach people scientific Marxism by teaching them about their favorite Christmas carol. So that's pretty neat. And that's a neat thing. Another thing, again, I'm going to have to find a version of it. I'm going to have to find a version of it. It won't be copyrighted. I don't think this is copyrighted. We shall see. But, every time I hear "Oh Christmas Tree," "Oh Christmas Tree, oh Christmas Tree, da-dun, da-dun, dun, da-da." Every time I hear that, I obviously, my mind starts singing a very different set of lyrics. And I think you all know where I'm going with this, right? You all know where I'm going with this. So hold up. I'm pulling it up for you, just like I did with King Wenceslas. So now we know that Good King Wenceslas has socialist values in it. This next song, I think you all know where I'm going. Every time I hear "Oh Christmas Tree," right, I think of the lyrics to what is the anthem of the British Labour Party. This song is the anthem of the British Labour Party. It was an anthem of Marxism. It's pretty old. It's almost as old as the Internationale. And it goes like this. Here we go. Yeah. Though cowards flinch and traitors sneer, we'll keep the red flag flying here. And that anthem is very much, that is the anthem of the Second International. That's a Second International song if there ever was one. Look round, the Frenchman loves its blaze. The sturdy German chants its praise. In Moscow's vaults, its hymns were sung. Chicago swells the sturging throng. Right? So that's, all those parties that were part of the Second International. The French, the Germans, the Russians, Chicago, that's the struggle of the Haymarket riots, right? And that line about the sturdy German chants its praise, that's because the German Social Democratic Labor Party, or the German Social Democratic Workers Party, or just the Social Democratic Party, the SDP, right? The SPD of Germany, that was very much the that was the anthem of that was the biggest party of the Second International. And until the failure of the German Revolution in 1918, Germany was the country where Marxism was based. Marxism was the strongest of any country in Germany until World War I, when the Social Democrats sold out and supported the war. And then after the war, when the workers rose up and there was a revolution, which they then turned around to suppress. So, and that line about the sturdy German chants its praise. But yeah, this is, it's one of the most famous socialist anthems. They sing it at every British Labour Party conference. There was a big scandal. They said that, Jeremy Corbyn, once they saw him singing the lyrics to the red flag, but not God Save the Queen at a conference or something. This is how they do those things. But, there you go. But I thought I would share that with you all. Another night we'll do the death of young Andrew. That's a bit of a bummer. It's a bit of a violent R-rated ballad. But even the death of young Andrew, it has a vaguely anti-capitalist it has a vaguely anti-capitalist theme to it, right? And the death of young Andrew, the ballad of young Andrew, that is a really dark R-rated song. But if the very end of it, there's like kind of a vaguely anti-capitalist message, right? Even though this is like, feudalism is still in existence, but there's something about it. Should I do that? Do we want to do Death of Young Andrew tonight, or is it too violent? Is that too violent? Do we want to do what do people in the chat think? I'll let people in the chat decide. We could do that before we do start answering questions, right? Do we want to do Young Andrew? Because I've got a version of it. It's a long song, but it's pretty violent. But do people want to do it or not? Right? I'll let people decide. I'm looking at the chat. You guys tell me. The squeaky oil gets the grease. If you don't want to hear it because it's too violent and depressing, or if you do want to hear it, let me know. Class Analysis says we can handle it. David Fox says he's okay with it. JT24 said I want to go with it. Restless Native says I'm down. All right, y'all. We're going to do it. We're going to do Young Andrew. We're going to do it. I've got a version of it I can pull up. This is not for the squeamish. Let me just put it that way. This is an old English ballad. Let me just pull it up here. It is a very, very old song. This guy named Childs was going around England in the 1600s collecting songs. And he was going around and he found this old ballad that's very poetic, but it's very dark. It's very dark. But it has kind of a vaguely anti-capitalist theme if you get to the end of it. It's about betrayal. It's about vengeance. And it kind of shows you, you know, one thing I've always wanted to say is people are always so damn hard on gangster rap, aren't they? You know, they are always so hard on gangster rap, right? It's like, oh my God, rap is so violent. And they're talking about, you know, bitches and hoes and shooting and killing. We can't have that. Listen to the lyrics to this song. Like, I mean, this song, it doesn't get more graphic and gory and violent than this. Or, you know, listen to some traditional Irish music for goodness sakes. You know, listen to some traditional Irish music, right? Listen to Whiskey in the Jar. The song Whiskey in the Jar, one of my favorite traditional Irish songs. It's about a guy who robs a cop at gunpoint, takes the money home, and then his girlfriend betrays him. So he gets dragged to jail. And then he's talking about how he wants to have his brother who's in the military break him out of the jail. That's what the song is about, right? I mean, how is that any more offensive than gangster rap? That's about a guy who goes around robbing cops at gunpoint. And then the lyrics are about getting drunk, right? The chorus is about whiskey in the jar, getting drunk. And, you know, there's a lot of, you know, popular songs that are like songs of the people that do involve things like domestic violence, criminality, you know, sexual, you know, promiscuity, sexual crimes, you know, I mean, you know, the working class often have a very violent life and violent existence. And so, you know, the songs of the working class often will be quite, you know, quite graphic and quite, you know, explicit. And the fact that people can't, you know, people always, you know, want to make that, you know, they always want to make that like some kind of, moralistic complaint, and they don't get it, right? They don't get that, you know, that, yeah, the lives of the rich might be all posh and clean, but for the working class, often life is very, very, not pretty, as they say. I'm trying to move the file to where I can upload it. This is, all right, here we go. All right, so there we go. We got it there, and now we're moving it to the desktop. All right, now I moved the file to the desktop. Here we go. This is a long song. I'm going to write down this super chat. Arguments for the man on the street about Ukraine. Got it. And now we've done Good King Wenceslas. We've done the People's Flag. So now we are going to do the Ballad of Young Andrew. Again, viewer discretion is advised. Or listener discretion is advised. This is a pretty dark song. So here you go. And it's pretty long too.
As I lay in my bed asleep, a dreadful draught in my mind I drew. I dreamed of a lady and her young man, and he was known as Young Andrew. The moon shone bright and it cast fair light. Welcome, says she, my honey, my sweet, for I have loved thee 7 long years, and now at last we've the chance to meet. And then he took her in his arms, kissed her on both cheek and chin, and twice or thrice he pleasured her before the two must part again. Says she, good sir, you've had your will, you can demand no more of me. Remember what you said before, take me to church and marry me. Fair maid, I can't do as I would, but my sweet love, if you love me, go home and fetch your father's gold, and I'll go to church and marry thee. This lady's gone to her father's home, and well she knew where his gold lay. She's counted out £500, back to her love she's away. She gave it all to young Andrew, with chains and jewels no gold could buy. Then he took her by the lily white hand, and he led her up to a hill so high. She wore a gown of velvet black, a pitiful sight as ye shall see. Take off your velvet gown, for no foot further you'll go with me. She took off her gown of velvet black, full many a salt tear did she cry, and in a robe of finest silk she stood before young Andrew's eye. Take off your silken robe, your finery shall go with me. I'll take it for my lady fair, who I love more than I love thee. Then she took off her silken robe, full many a salt tear did she cry, in a petticoat of scarlet red she stood before young Andrew's eye. Take off your petticoat, for even that shall go with me. I'll take it for my lady fair, where she does dwell in a far country. She says, remember, young Andrew, that you were once of woman born, and for that child that Mary bore, pray let me keep my petticoat on. O lady fair, I know it well, that I was once of woman born, yet for no child that Mary bore will I let you keep your petticoat on. Then he pulled forth a Scottish sword, and he held it there in his right hand. Says, will you die on my sword's point, or naked go back home again? My father is a right good earl, as any in this whole country. if ever he your body takes, it'll flower on a gallows tree. And I have 7 brothers, says she, all hardy men and bold are they, if ever they your body take, you'll never see another day. Though your father is a right good earl, as any in this whole country, he never shall my body take, or fly so fast across the sea. Though you have 7 brothers, says he, and hardy men and bold are they never shall my body take, across the hills or fly away. This lady's gone to her father's hall, where everyone their rest did take, all but the earl, her father dear, who lay awake for his daughter's sake. She stood there naked at the door. Who's there? Her father called within. It is your daughter, Helen, she cried. I pray you, rise and let me in. But up and spoke her father dear, no, I'll not rise and let you in. You'll never enter through that door till you bring me back my gold again. Oh, father dear, your gold is gone. I cannot bring it back again. Then naked you came into this world, and naked you'll return again. She stood there quaking on the ground, until her heart it burst in 3, and in the morning she was found stone cold dead beneath the tree. And when her father he got up, this pitiful sight that he might spy, his naked daughter lying dead, the salt tears trickled from his eye. I set so much store by my gold, and now my daughter's lost today, like flowers fading in the frost. This poor old man would waste away. These 7 brothers, they then rose up and chased young Andrew into Wales. They caught him there by such a wile, he'll tell no more such lying tales. They left young Andrew there for dead. Full son a wolf scented his smell, and she came roaring like a bear, and gaping like a fiend of hell. She finished what the men began. When young Andrew at last had died, the hungry wolf devoured him, the Earl's gold lying by his side.
Yeah, so maybe if you couldn't follow the story, right? Young Andrew is in love with the young woman, right? He's in love with the young woman. And he says, she says, "Hey, are you going to marry me like you said you would?" And he says, "Why don't you go steal your father's gold for me? And then we can get married." So she goes and steals her father's gold. And she comes back to young Andrew. Young Andrew's like, "Thanks for the gold. I'm going to go marry somebody else. But before I go, I'm going to take my sword out and hold my sword at your throat and take all your clothes from you and strip you completely naked because the clothes are valuable and I want them for the other woman that I'm in love with." So she's loses all her clothes. And so then she runs home naked and it's freezing cold. And her father is mad that she stole the gold. So he won't let her in. So she freezes to death outside in the winter. And then the father comes out and he sees his daughter frozen dead because he's mad that, she stole his gold. So the father breaks down and cries. And in a couple versions of this, he dies. I don't think he died in the one you just heard, but in a couple versions of it, he dies. So then her 7 brothers start, they're going to get revenge on young Andrew, right? They're going to get some vengeance. So they chase him all the way to Wales. Right. And they chase him to Wales. And then they beat him up a whole bunch. And he's left for dead. And then he's still not dead yet. And then a wolf comes and finishes him off. A wild wolf finishes off young Andrew. Yeah, pretty R-rated. It's funny. Some of you were hearing this and you're like, how is this R-rated? I was like, well, give it a few minutes. Give it another 10, 12 minutes. I think you'll understand why it's pretty R-rated, and it's pretty explicit. I mean, at the beginning, they're talking about him pleasuring her, and then she's running around naked, and he's holding swords at her throat, and, it's pretty violent stuff. Now, actually, there's different versions of it. In that version, the vengeance against young Andrew is actually pretty tame. I will quickly read you how young Andrew dies in another version. In another version, he dies, it's much more clear how they kill him. In the other version that I've heard, so they say, right, and up they rose, these 7 brothers, and they chased him deep into Wales, and there they caught him by a well, that now he must tell no more such tales. For there he stood, this young Andrew, like any fox they ringed him round, crying, "We've not come for our father, but for our sister you've done down." The two of them, they broke his legs, and 2 of them broke his collarbone, and 2 of them broke his 2 arms, and they leaned him back against a stone. And up and rose the eldest one, saying, "See the pity we show thee, for you ne'er shed our sister's blood, so we'll not do that unto thee." And then they took up their father's gold and laid it out in young Andrew's sight, saying, "Guard this well, ye young Andrew, defend it well from the wolves tonight." And as they left this young Andrew as naked as the day he's born, saying, "Men will strip you to the skin, but wolves will strip you to the bone." So that's a pretty more violent comeuppance, right? But I was thinking about this song the other day, and I noticed something. Why did the brothers not take the gold back? think about it. In both versions, in every version I've ever heard, the father is so mad that his gold has been stolen. The father is so mad that the gold has been stolen that, he kills his daughter, basically leaving her out in the freezing cold. And he's so mad about that. And they chase this guy all the way to Wales, and they fuck him up pretty bad and almost kill him. And then the wolf finishes him off, but they leave the gold, right? The gold. That's what the whole thing is about. They leave the gold because the gold is cursed. The gold is tainted. That's the point. The love of gold is what caused young Andrew to be so evil that he would do this to a woman, make her think he loved her. Also, he could get the gold. The love of gold is what made the father so angry at his daughter that he let her freeze to death in the winter. And so because of that, even though the whole thing is about the gold, they chase him all the way to another country, to Wales. They fuck him up. They kill him, almost kill him. But they don't then take the gold back because it's like the gold is tainted. It's like the gold is cursed, right? An unintentional capitalist song. Exactly. It's like Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens wasn't explicitly anti-capitalist, but his writing bemoans the man's inhumanity to man that comes with a society where wealth is in power. And it's kind of like a feudal moralist Christian objection to capitalism, right? That after so much horror was done in the name of this gold, that they're going to leave it to die with young Andrew, right? You wanted the gold, you keep the gold. And they don't take the father's gold back. They just leave it there because they're just so, the gold caused so much evil to happen, right? And that struck me. That's kind of a vaguely anti-capitalist theme in this ballad, this dark old English ballad. It's your Lumpia is very right. It's very, very depressing. But the way I heard this song is a wild story. When I was a kid, my parents were in a storytelling group, and they went to this like storytelling festival in upstate New York. And there was a guy with a harp, and he performed this song. And I was like 5, and I was just like, oh my God. And I didn't even get it. A lot of it just went right over my head because I was like 5, but I was just like, it stuck with me. And so a couple of years ago, I remembered this. I'm like, the death of young Andrew. So I thought I would actually go listen to it as an adult. And like, I didn't remember what it was about. I just remember there was this very violent song called The Death of Young Andrew. So a few years ago, I dug it up, and I was like, damn, that's something interesting. And it really goes to show that, man's inhumanity to man is nothing new. People do nasty and cruel things to each other. They do nasty and cruel things to each other in pursuit of gold. That is something that has kind of lived throughout the ages, right? And that why would you have a society where that is in power, right? Where the gold is, and the lust for gold is the driving force behind the economy. That's very, very dangerous, right? And this understanding that people do ruthless and cruel things, and the lust for wealth, right? You would want to have that not be the basis of a society. So I just thought I'd share that all with you. Since we're, Lori Spencer says you can't take it with you. Lumpia did storytelling contests as a kid and won. Worse than gold is the US dollar, says Class Analysis. Very good. So, all right, folks, I guess that's what we talked about for our opening remarks. I told a Christmassy story. Then we listened to some Christmas songs. Then we listened to a dark old English ballad. Names and locations, folks. Names and locations. Names and locations. Exactly, Lori. Exactly. Names and locations, folks. Names and locations. I will call you out as I see you. Names and locations. Names and locations. Who's with us tonight? Who's with us? Names and locations. Who's with us tonight? Brian from Vancouver. Bryington from Vancouver. Rupert Fellows from England. St. David's, Bermuda. Nate is on vacation. Edward Allen is in Kentucky. Art is in Ireland. Michael is in Houston. Jenny Lynn is in Cincinnati. JT24 from Mississippi. Tony from Tasmania. Jared from Virginia. Joe in South Jersey. Right? I came here for hope not to feel sad. Well, I'm sorry. Heidi in Edinburgh. Deborah in Mexico. Sarah in Idaho. Everyone's here, right? Naked Beneath the Tree. It's pronounced Brighton. Okay. Tristan in Maryland. Yuri in New York. We got Bob Troy in New York. We got Joyce and Arnold from Texas. Peter from California. Tyler in Missouri. Minden out in Midwest. Olympia Logic. We got Canada. We got Auckland, New Zealand. We got Detroit. We got Patch from Australia. We got another from Canada lurking here over in England. Very, very good. Detroit. We got Anthony from Detroit. John McCarthy in Chicago. I love that. Very, very, very good. I love that is with us. Very, very good. So glad to have you all here with us. So glad to have you all here with us. AJ from Chi-Town is with us. And thank you for your super chat earlier, AJ. Was received with thanks. Andrew from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. James from Phuket, Scotland, or Phuket, Thailand, sorry. Misread Arizona as Australia. Oh, did I? Oh, boy. Oh, boy. There you go. There you go. There you go. Is that how Sarah Palin talks? There you go. Can I call you Joe? Germany, we got Klaus Kingsley. Indonesia, we got MHMD313 in Indonesia. Very, very good. Very, very good. All right, folks. If anyone's got any more super chat questions, we got 2 of them here for me to answer, and I will answer them. And if no more super chats come in, I'll be done. But if there's other things people want me to talk about, by all means, super chats are appreciated. Is it a good Sarah Palin, Is it a good Sarah Palin? I was against Julian Assange, when I was in the Congress and when I was an elected official, but now I kind of like Julian Assange, don't you know? How do communists organize under intense repression? Very good. All righty. So first question, where are my streams archived if my YouTube goes down? Good question. First place the streams are archived is on Rockfin, and I will link the Rockfin, right? And that's where you can watch my interview with Russell Texas Bentley. It's on Rockfin. The second place. Very good. Hold up. The second place that my streams are archived is on Odyssey. For some reason, they don't put the numbers on Odyssey when I upload them. I don't know why. It doesn't do them with numbers. So it'll just say Tuesday night chat or whatever. So Odyssey. They're on Odyssey. And the last place that my streams are archived, right, is on Rumble. Right? So hold up. How do I link my channel here on Rumble? Let me see. It's a little trickier, but they're on Rumble as well. Let me link the Rumble, right? Everywhere you go, my streams are archived. Here we go. Here it is. And on Rumble. So yes, you can watch my stuff, and I will not go away. I mean, if something were to happen to the YouTube channel, I would reappear. I'd be on other platforms. That's just how these things work. So yeah, those are the places. Also, patrons only stream. We are going to have a patrons only stream soon. So if you want to be included on that, by all means, sign up. I'm going to data hoard your channel at some point anyway. What does that mean? What does that mean? Can someone explain to me what that means? Data hoard my channel? How does that work? But if you want to be part of the patrons only stream, you got to sign up on Patreon. So there you go. Sign on up. There you go. That's a great thing to do. And, the Center for Political Innovation is always looking for new members. We have membership meetings every week. So sign on up. Very good. We having our membership meetings. We're having an event March 25th. Location to be announced. Still working out. But the location is still to be announced. Oh, he's going to record and store my content. That's good. So that is where you can find my stuff. You can find it on Odyssey, on Rockfin, and on Rumble. Are you ready to rumble? There we go. All right. Arguments for the man on the street about Ukraine. Why the USA shouldn't get involved. Well, first things first, I think one of the strongest arguments is that it's just not our business. It's not our business. Right? There are a lot of people in Ukraine who like Russia. And these people declared independence, and there's been this whole conflict. Why should the USA get involved? Why? There's no point in the USA getting involved. Second reason is there are literal Nazis who are involved on the side the USA is supporting. Third reason would be these horrendous atrocities. Look at the way they're tying people to lampposts and the horrendous things they're doing to the people in the areas the Ukrainian forces retake. Third thing is it's making the gas prices go up. There you go. Comments on Indonesia's new anti-communist laws. I didn't know about that, but we'll talk about that. But the gas prices, right? Causes the gas prices to go up. That's another reason to be against it. There's plenty of reasons. No one's winning from the USA continuing to get involved. Finally, again, this is billions and billions of dollars in U.S. taxpayer money. All the money that could be going to food stamps, all the money that could go to rebuilding the country is instead going to pour weapons into Ukraine to inflame tensions with Russia, to support these forces that are committing atrocities, to further divide a country that has nothing to do with us. It's not a sensible policy. If you can get past the whole CNN, oh my God, the poor Ukrainians are dying. If you can get past that, there's no reason for the USA to get involved, right? Once you take apart the CNN, oh my God, Putin's killing people. If you get past that, there's really no logical reason for the USA to be involved. And that's why, it's Republicans mainly in the United States that are critical of it. So there you go. All right. And now we have David Fox asking about, oh, no. We have next, we have how do communists organize under intense repression? And that's from Max the Sax. Well, and what's going on in Peru? All right, we'll talk about that. What's going on in Peru? All right. So first question, how do communists organize under intense repression? Well, it's interesting, but one thing that is true for most totalitarian regimes is that even though the communists are not allowed to legally exist, the Communist Party is outlawed, people know where to find them. And that's an odd thing about totalitarian states. They don't generally, it's not like they track down every possible communist and round them up. It's not like that. In Franco's Spain, it was illegal to be a communist, but there were underground trade unions, and there were a lot of university, secret reading groups and stuff. And if you were in Spain under Franco and you wanted to find communists, you knew where to go. You'd go to the universities. You'd say to somebody, I'd really like to read Marx's, right? Yeah, and you could find them. And that's true in a lot of countries where communists are illegal. The government knows where they are and allows them to exist in a kind of clandestine manner. And it's a little weird. It's like outlawing them is you're not allowed to run in elections. You're not allowed to openly organize as communists. You're not allowed to publicly promote communism. But near the universities, they ain't that hard to find. In the labor unions, if the labor unions are legal, people can usually find them. And, there's usually some kind of place where the communists exist. And they're not called the communists, but people are like, yeah, that's the commies, and they're watched heavily by the government. And every so often they arrest one of them or execute one of them because they exist, just to send a statement to scare people, but they exist. And that's really a common thing. And I know it's like that in many countries, and even Nazi Germany, right? That there were parts of, immediately after Hitler came in, they rounded up all the leaders of the Communist Party, all the leaders of the Social Democratic Party, a lot of the labor union leaders, and put them in prison camps. And then after 2 or 3 years, they had a very big, what do they call that? An amnesty. And they let a lot of those folks go with the understanding of you don't cause any trouble. And we've got this on your record. But even in Nazi Germany, there was a weird kind of understanding that, and that there were a lot of there were a lot of guys, they called them beefcakes. And they were guys who had converted to being Nazis at the last minute. They'd been leaders of the Communist Party's armed militia, the Red Front Fighters League. And at the last minute, they're like, oh, we surrender and we're Nazis. And they were never trusted because everyone was like, yeah, you only became Nazis because you were losing. You can read about the beefcakes, they were called. They were the beefcakes because they were brown on the outside, but red on the inside. Beefsteaks. Yeah. And that in totalitarian societies, the government doesn't really want to just completely go after all communists, right? It's not like 1984. It's not like that. It's like they don't want communists to openly organize. They don't want communists causing trouble. But they're there. And that to some degree or other, right? Like Franco's Spain, for example, a fascist government, Franco, but he was friendly with Fidel Castro, very friendly with Fidel Castro, had good relations with Fidel Castro. Well, how can, in order for Cuba and Franco's Spain to have good relations, there can't be a communist party in Spain. There's got to be a group of people in Spain who handle the relationship with Cuba and like arrange the trips and stuff and arrange the business contracts and relations. And Fidel Castro might have a say in picking who those Spaniards are. And it's kind of understood those guys are people that kind of like Fidel Castro. They're not communists, though. There's a lot of that goes on, right? And like Nazi Germany, they had to have an economic relationship with the Soviet Union. So, yeah, they shut down the Communist Party. Yeah, but there were things in Nazi Germany that people knew. If you were looking for communists, you went there. In Red Star Over China by Edgar Snow, he talks about how he was in, after the KMT outlawed the Communist Party in China, the Communist Party was driven into the countryside. Edgar Snow wanted to interview Mao. And so he went to a Russian professor. And there was a professor from Russia who was like a guest professor. And the guy was a citizen of the Soviet Union who was teaching. He was a professor. And he went to the guy and he said, gee, I'd really like to interview Mao if only there was somebody who knew where I could find him, and did, something like that. And then the professor said, oh boy, I can't help you with that. I know nothing about the communists. Nothing. I know nothing about them. And then Edgar Snow got a letter in the mail written in invisible ink with instructions about you go and meet somebody here. Things like that happened. And that, that totalitarian regimes, it's about terrorizing people, right? It's about making sure that no one emerges to give the regime any trouble. That's basically what it's about. But in order for them to exist, to have relations with the Soviet Union, in order, a lot of times they have legal labor unions, right? They want to show, look, we're not authoritarian. We allow labor unions. Look, we have fascist unions, right? In Franco's Spain, they had fascist unions. Fascist Italy, they had fascist unions. Well, there's some really noisy people that are just really interested in organizing those fascist unions. And it's like, okay, yeah, we know what you are. We know what party you used to be in before it was outlawed. We're not going to say anything because you're keeping the fascist union, following the rules, and you're a little bit harder in the negotiations than we'd like. But, we know what you are. These things happen, right? And most quote unquote totalitarian societies, communists aren't allowed to openly function as communists, but people kind of know where to find them. And the regime also knows where to find them. The secret police knows that, and it watches them. They're watched very closely. And every so often, they do drag one of them out and execute them or lock them up and make a big show of it to like terrify other people from associating with them. But they still exist, right? And that's one thing about our movement. It's kind of fascinating that, there were communists. There were underground communist networks all through Nazi Germany. But there were also not so underground networks. There were people who managed the business deals with the Soviet Union. There were people that were very vocal in the leadership of the fascist labor union. And, they were, and that's how it is in a lot of countries. And that's an interesting thing that I've observed. And that again,
while Nazi Germany isn't going to allow a full communist party, if they're going to have business deals with the Soviet Union, they kind of have to allow something to be there, right? And the resistance networks that you hear about in Nazi Germany, the people who like sabotaged defense plants or like blew up, the trains, the train tracks, those people were as far away from the visible communists as you could get, because the visible communists, the regime knew they were communists. They weren't allowed to openly be communists, but everyone knew what they were, and they were being very, very carefully watched. So that's interesting to me. And if you think about it, right? So hypothetically speaking, let's say that America, we became a fascist country, right? Well, that would mean that if there were, usually when there's a fascist coup, that means there's a huge communist party. So that huge communist party would be like smashed, right? It would be outlawed. The leaders of it would all be dragged to jail. But, China is going to have to do business deals. Well, I explained, I'm repeating myself. But anyway, it's like communists always kind of exist, even in societies where they can't openly exist. And there's always like something there that people kind of know is where the communists are. And the government kind of knows that as well. And then there's also some kind of clandestine, like actually militant, group that carries out armed attacks or something. And that group, that engages in sabotage or assassinations or whatever, that group is completely separate from the legal entity. I believe in Iran, if I'm not mistaken, the Young Communist League of Iran changed its name to the Students Taking Imam's Line, right? It was the Young Communist League, and then the Islamic Republic outlawed, communism. So they voted, and they said, well, now that Khomeini is the new leader, and Khomeini is anti-imperialist, so we're going to call ourselves the Students Taking Imam Khomeini's Line. I think that was the name of their organization. And that things like that go on, right? And that actually, there were a number of communist groups in Iran at the time of the Islamic Revolution, and the main communist party in Iran was called the Tudeh Party, which is it's the Communist Party. It means like the People's Party or whatever. And then there was the Fedayeen, the People's Fedayeen guerrillas, and then there was the Mujahideen Khalq. And the Mujahideen Khalq and the Fedayeen hated the Tudeh Party because the Tudeh Party, it officially dissolved, but, and their youth group was suddenly Students Taking Imam's Line, and they did everything they could to just kind of, even though they were an illegal organization. But what's fascinating is that like the Tudeh Party was labeled by the other parties as it was labeled as a collaborator with Khomeini. And like when the Tudeh Party would have meetings in exile in Britain or in New York City, there would be Fedayeen people protesting outside and Mujahideen people protesting outside against this collaborator party that was collaborating with the Mujahideen or with the Khomeini government. It's kind of fascinating, and that even though the Tudeh Party was illegal, it was labeled by the other communist parties in Iran as a collaborator with the regime because they took the position. The Tudeh Party said, look, Khomeini is the leader. Khomeini's not a communist. He's an anti-communist, but he's anti-imperialist. So it's our duty to support Khomeini as much as we can, but kind of nudge him to not be anti-Soviet and to be more revolutionary, more anti-capitalist, and more anti-imperialist. And that kind of thing goes on. The other thing that I think is interesting, and oh shit, it's not on. There we go. All right, now we're back on the Yeti. All right, very good. Very, very good. So the other thing that's interesting is, I've been reading a lot about Gerry Healy lately. I've always been kind of interested in Gerry Healy, the leader of the British Trotskyist who was a personal friend of Gaddafi and all of that. Why don't we watch some Gerry Healy? You want to watch some Gerry Healy? I've been fascinated by Gerry Healy lately because I've always admired Gaddafi as a great anti-imperialist. And, I admired the fact that he was for Palestine and he had Vanessa Redgrave make her Great Palestine, documentary. But why don't we watch some Gerry Healy? right? Why don't we, it was like the biggest socialist group in Britain in the 80s until it was destroyed by a CIA, or an MI6 like government operation. But, Gerry Healy, his group was widely accused of being a front for Iraqi, Syrian, and Libyan intelligence, right? That was the allegation. It was a front for Iraqi, Syrian, and Libyan intelligence. And part of what they did was that the Communist Party of Syria and the Communist Party of Iraq were collaborating with U.S. imperialism against the Iraqi government because Iraq was anti-communist, right? And so it's alleged, I don't know if they really did this or not, but it's alleged that the Healyites, they like spied on the communists of Iraq and the communists of Libya in exile. The communists of Libya that were moving against Gaddafi. It's alleged that they like took pictures of them and like spied on them for Gaddafi. They spied on the Iraqi communists in exile for Saddam Hussein. They spied on the Syrian communists in exile for Bashar Assad. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the allegation that was leveled against them by the other Trotskyists. And I think that's interesting as well. And I've been reading a lot about Gerry Healy and kind of how the government operation against him was carried out. And I plan to stream about that at some point. I'm not ready to stream about that just yet. But, people don't realize how big they were. I mean, they were a very, very big party. And what they did for Palestine was really amazing. I mean, Vanessa Redgrave, this famous actress, made a whole documentary, which you can watch on YouTube, by the way. It's a great documentary called The Palestinians. And it was one of the first documentaries about Palestine that was widely circulated. And Gaddafi, helped pay for it. And they made this documentary about the Palestinian people and their struggle. And they screened it all over the world. You see Nick Brana questioning squad members about the rail strike. I did. And that was very good. I retweeted it, and we could play that on a future stream, I think. But why don't we watch some Gerry Healy for now? Right. But yeah, people don't realize how big Gerry Healy's group was. So we can watch some Gerry Healy. And, Gerry Healy, again, he's not a woke. He's got that communist speaking style. Wait till you hear Gerry Healy talk. This was a great leader of the British working class, despite his Trotskyist views. A personal friend of Gaddafi. He called Gaddafi his good friend, did huge work for the Palestinians. This is a great guy, Gerry Healy.
We continue this struggle. We are here and we are fighting as never before to develop it on the widest possible front. And when we look at the achievements, financial, technical, without any assistance, except from who? The youth, the young trade unionists, in the factories, who gave us this means. We now can present the two basic ingredients of the workers' press. Firstly, the continuity of Bolshevism by those who have continuously fought against Stalinism and its betrayals. Secondly, the relationship between those who fought for Bolshevism in the early days and the youth of today. That's the unbreakable alliance behind the workers' press. We're not going to break now no more than we broke in the 30s. We're not going to give up the production of this paper because of some difficulties. We're very confident, indeed. We can afford to be confident. We start this paper not at all on a shoestring. We started with the most modern, technical innovations in the printing industry. And we started in London, in the centre. We are not only preparing to produce this paper in large quantities over the next 2 years, we're already negotiating for a press that will produce not just 22,000 copies an hour, but 60,000 copies an hour. We are not going to
1972, we launched 5 right-to-work marches from Glasgow, Liverpool, South Wales, Kent, Southampton. Welcome the National Secretary of the SLL, Gerry Healy.
To the young marchers we say the following. You are our most treasured comrades. By your march you have roused decisive sections of the working class to action. You have dealt a mighty blow to the bans and prescriptions in the Tory government. You will occupy a place of honour for all time in our great movement. We will leave no stone unturned in preparing you for the all-important task in the participation and the strengthening of the leadership of the Socialist Labour League. You are our comrades for all time in this great fight.
We take another historic leap. 4,500 fill the Alexandra Palace in a rally against the Tory government.
From the history of the English working class we know that for 200 years they have fought and defended the right to have trade unions. That trade unions in Britain are the working class. That you cannot separate the trade unions from the working class. And those who want to destroy them will have to destroy the working class. That leaves you in front of this corrupt, degenerate Tory party and its capitalist hangers on. We know that in this situation, trade unions cannot be defended by reformists and class collaborators. Trade unions can only be defended now by revolutionary action, by a revolutionary party. Therefore, in calling to build this party, in asking you to support the resolution towards the end of this rally, that we go forward from here in order to found this party, to transform the Socialist Labour League into the party, the revolutionary party of the English working class. We know we are speaking in the best revolutionary traditions of the English working class today. Because they want to defend their rights, their basic rights, and the only movement that can do that is a movement that's setting itself out to put an end to capitalism for all time.
February the 12th, 1983. The Rhineland town of Trier, Germany. Birthplace of Karl Marx, founder of scientific socialism. To commemorate his death 100 years ago, 130 youth from 7 countries assembled to start a 250-mile march through Europe. Destination, Highgate Cemetery, London.
The working class will have to learn in the fire of struggle. We are confident that the working class will learn in the struggle. And consequently we have no hesitation at all in saying that on this 100th centenary of Marx's death, Marxism lives. It's a vital force all over the world. And consequently we will carry the banner of Marxism high in the victory of the world socialist revolution. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so that's Gerry Healy. You know, I just thought that was worth showing you all because I mean that organization, the Workers' Revolutionary Party of Britain, before it was destroyed by British intelligence, It was a massive organization. And they achieved a huge amount, and it was pro-Gaddafi. It was pro-Iraqi Ba'athist Arab socialism. It was pro-Syrian Arab socialism, pro-Cuba. It was a revolutionary anti-imperialist organization, despite Trotskyist roots. So there you go. So I hope that answered the question of Max about organizing under repression. So the next question we've got is about the new anti-communist laws in Indonesia. So I haven't heard about that, but I'm going to look it up, right? I did not know that. I know about the coup that happened in 1965. That Obama's family was, new Indonesian law. Okay, interesting. So in Indonesia, no sex outside of marriage, no abortion, and no Marxism, right? Indonesia's parliament unanimously passed a long-expected revision of the country's penal code on Tuesday that criminalizes sex outside of marriage for citizens as well as foreigners, prohibits contraception, forbids progressive political thought, and bans the defamation of presidents or state institutions. The amended code also expands the existing blasphemy law, maintains a 5-year prison term for deviations from the central tenets of Indonesia's 6 recognized religions: Islam, Protestantism, Catholicism, Hinduism, and Confucianism. Citizens can face a 10-year prison term for associating with organizations that follow the Marxist-Leninist ideology, and a 4-year sentence for spreading communism. Anti-communism has long been a tenet of the Indonesian state. That makes sense, right? Because the government, the government of Indonesia traces its roots back to the coup of 1965, and also Indonesia is a hotbed of Wahhabi activity. And ethnically Chinese people in Indonesia are brutally repressed. They are persecuted, and the coup of 1965 turned into a genocide of ethnically Chinese people. And some of the Wahhabi imams, the ministers, the clergy that are very anti-China, and tied in with Saudi Arabia, some of the Muslim imams in Indonesia, they go as far as to claim that Chinese people are actually Jews. And they make anti-Semitic arguments that ethnically Chinese people are secretly Jews because they're all communists and they are greedy with money, and they like use the anti-Semitism from the rest of the world. They apply it to ethnically Chinese people. I learned about that, and I found that to be fascinating. And you can Google it. You can Google. There's articles about this, about how in Indonesia some of the anti-Semitic Muslim imams preach that ethnically Chinese people are secretly Jews. So there you go. But yeah, Indonesia is a hotbed of anti-communism because the coup government that came out of 1965 is an Islamic fundamentalist government that is aligned with Saudi Arabia. So there you go. Lech Walesa calling for Russia to be broken up. Wasn't he the Solidarity guy? Isn't he the Solidariznak guy? Isn't that who he is? He's a CIA guy, an anti-communist CIA trade unionist. Isn't that who he is? Lech Walesa, isn't he the Catholic labor union guy from Solidariznak? Are you surprised about the stuff he would say? But then the last question I've got here is very important, which is they just had a coup in Peru, and Pedro Castillo has been overthrown. There's violence on the streets of Peru. The president, not only was he removed from office, but he was dragged to jail. And that basically Pedro Castillo kind of entered an alliance with, the Biden forces against Fujimori. It came down to Fujimori, the daughter of the military dictator in the 80s or in the 90s, versus this guy, Pedro Castillo, that was kind of a leftist. Marxist-Leninist was his background. He got into office, and immediately when he got into office, the more pro-U.S. people, they fired his foreign minister. They wouldn't let him have his foreign minister. They immediately blocked him from doing everything he wanted to do, and he pushed back, and now he's been removed. And it's awful. And the people of Peru are in the streets opposing this coup. I've seen the video of the rebellions going on in Peru, and this is a coup. And it shows this new pink tide, right? Now, Pedro Castillo, it seems like he was a legit anti-imperialist, but he entered an alliance with this weird new pro-U.S. left. Whereas the guy in Colombia and the guy in Chile, and those are not revolutionaries. Those are not leftists, right? Whereas Nicaragua, that's a socialist government. Venezuela, that's a socialist government. And it looks like Pedro Castillo was kind of an anti-imperialist, but it was a popular front. and he was forced out of office. AMLO in Mexico is kind of an anti-imperialist. It's a popular front, and he's managed to stay in power, which is a good thing. Mexico is not a socialist country. It's, a popular front government. And I would say that Pedro Castillo's government, Pedro Castillo has more revolutionary roots, but he took power in a big alliance with a lot of left forces that were pro-imperialists. And now he's been forced out. And they use the same corruption bullshit, right? The same, he's corrupt. He's corrupt. They use that same bullshit to justify their ousting. And they will do that to any anti-imperialist. They just, Christina Kirchner, they just used it against her, and that it's a game they play. Do you think fentanyl and other drugs in U.S. cities is an intelligence op to undermine U.S. society like the Opium War in China? No, I think it's the result of the fact that Big Pharma has way too much power. Big Pharma has way too much power, and they figured out that getting people addicted to painkillers was a great way to make money. And so they put on all these conferences all across the United States where they told people that pain medications are not addictive, and they pushed doctors to prescribe opioids like water. And so all kinds of people, they would have surgery, and then the doctors would just hand out these opioids and they would get hooked. And generally, opioid addiction starts with someone having an injury or a surgery and getting addicted. And it was a great way to make money. And then once your prescriptions run out, you want to get that fixed. You're hooked on opioids, which is a very serious addiction, right? I mean, you're having very serious cravings. The next thing you need is heroin, right? And most of the heroin in the world, opium poppies, that come from Afghanistan. But fentanyl is synthetic heroin. It's heroin you don't need poppies to grow, right? You can cook it up with the right chemicals. And it's a lot more dangerous than heroin, right? So no, I don't think it's a conspiracy against the public per se. I think it's just a result of capitalist greed, and they don't really care. And on top of that, there are the breakdown of our society, the lack of economic stability. One of the main reasons people take heroin, and I've interviewed former heroin addicts about this. The main reason people take opioids is because of stress. They take that opioid and then suddenly they don't have a care in the world. Suddenly all their stress has gone away, right? And so when people are worried about paying their bills, when they're worried about, feeding their kids, when they're just stressed and overwhelmed and stressed, because staying alive is much harder in this low wage economy. Opioids are something that's very tempting, and that, it's a way of managing stress, right? People take cocaine and stuff because they're like artists, they're like fanatical, they're like workaholics, and they just want to go. They want to get themselves pumped up. But opioid, that's a depressant, that's a depressive drug, and people, they take it because they just want to zone out. They don't want to be worried anymore. They want to calm down. It's really sad. It's very sad. Where is it coming from? Well, we don't know where it's coming from. Some of the ingredients are made in China. That's true. But the idea that it's coming from China is not true, because people cook it up here in the United States. China makes all kinds of chemicals in China, right? And some of the chemicals that are used in fentanyl, that are also used in all kinds of other things, are made in China. That's true. However, fentanyl itself is not made in China. They get the chemicals and they get other stuff and they cook it up themselves here in the United States. And they're trying to blame it on China because some of the chemicals that are used are made in China, but that's ridiculous. China has some of the strictest anti-drug laws of any country in the world. So, the China is not responsible. And this is the oldest lie, just like the John Birch Society. They had this like a poster, and it had a syringe. It said "cut off China." It said China was responsible for the global heroin trade. And, this is an old lie that China is shipping in the heroin to kill all our young people. And that's just not true. Fentanyl it's a way to make a drug like heroin without having poppies, basically. That's what fentanyl is. So there you go. All right. And on that note, folks, I think we're going to end here for tonight. I might be back tomorrow night. I'm not sure. I'm definitely going to be on Sunday. On Sunday, we're bringing on Peter Coffin and Fox Green to talk about Peter Coffin's new amazing documentary that premieres on Sunday. But we might be back tomorrow night. We shall see. So good night, everybody. Good night. A new upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression but the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. While the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today. While the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today. Good night.